Alright, so they just released some patch notes and I wanted to do a quick read over of them and react to them. Relic? I really like this relic. I was really hoping they'd add something like this into the game. I can't remember exactly what I was thinking of, but this is really cool. I think this is really strong, honestly. It's also really nice. It helps out like Dag Orbs and the All Orb Nothing. Yeah, the All Orb Nothing, just because those orbs were they were a bit tough to use. Especially with their lack of AoE damage, and they really relied on Overwhammer, which is still a problem which I think that kind of deck will struggle with, but this looks good. Restore low damage orb once per battle, okay. Level 3, the restore will also increases your max HP by a small amount. That is really interesting. With the prevalence of self-damage happening and max HP increasing being very valuable, especially when you consider the event that halves your max HP, that's actually really interesting. And it's also a third healing orb in the game, which is really nice, honestly. This is great. Every map, this is amazing, honestly. Sometimes you just got like 2 mini bosses or 2 treasure chests total, excluding the one in the middle, and it was just like this is kind of going to be a boring run now. Super Sapper pegboard has been made denser. Okay, cool. It was a bit yeah, I like that. Reef bomb self damage has been reduced to 3. See, I'm not sure about this unless they also changed Sapper Sack, because Sapper Sack was ridiculously strong to the point where I think they could have changed Rig Bomb damage to 5. But I do agree when you're looking at other stuff that the self damage being 4 was just a bit rough. It also makes intentional overball a very big deal, because going from 4 to 3 to 2 is massive. Kabbalistic Ruins HP reduced. Alright, non-crucible runs. Sounds good. It was probably a tough level. Bulldog got reverted, which honestly, thank God for that. It needed it. I don't know why they needed to change it in the last patch. And yeah, it should help out stone comps a bit more. Orboros's damage has been increased. Now, unless they change the echo on this or something about the Orboros, I don't know why they did this. Orboros is basically like the strongest orb in the game. And it's definitely one of the strongest events, just because it can remove everything from your deck, which is a massive upside. Oblation, self-damage reduced, really? I don't think they needed to do that. I think it was really good before. I hadn't managed to run it yet properly, but it felt pretty good. Constricting chains crit damage boost increased. So what? That was +2/+3. So now it's +2/+4. That sounds very interesting. I like that a lot. Salt Shaker and Gardener's Glove relics were removed from random relic pool. Yeah, no, that's amazing. I'm so happy they finally got rid of them. There are a bunch of cool things they could have done to change it, but I'm more than happy for them to just get rid of it. 2 items removed from the Castle Knight mini boss encounter. Thank God for that. The dreaded 200-600 fight where they could just ping away all of your health before the enemies actually got to you, and they had shields protecting them. Like, it was the entire reason why you would take AoE early on, just because you can't deal with this 200-600 fight if you get to it. That's very nice. Number of brick slimes reduced in both encounters. That's amazing. It felt like there was just like 1 or 2 many slimes each time, and it was just a bit annoying each time. Plant Trio mini boss HP reduced for crucible 3+. Cool. That fight can get very tough. They deal a lot of pinging damage, and it can get pretty rough. Additional bombs added to shield, archer, cleric, castle battle. Sounds cool. I'm not sure exactly what that is, but more bombs is generally really good, because some comps really struggle in the AoE department, especially if they don't get Overwhammer. Bully Ball now gets correctly boosted by Orboros discard self damage. Okay, that's very cool. Is that a misspell, or is it? I swear it's Bully Ball. Refresh orb should now always correctly have its level 3 upgrade available. I'm not exactly sure what that means, but sounds good. Sapper boss grid cells no longer correct. Okay, sounds good. And main menu change. Alright, sounds good. This is a really interesting patch. Alright, so right here I basically have all of the comps in the game, and I want to just rate them based on how they've been for the last patch. I know the patch just came out today, but I'm not sure it's going to change this up too much. So the first one I'm going to rate is obviously just short stack, which is generally just adding as many crits to the board, generally using Critable to boost your short stack damage as much as possible, and it's just really, really incredibly strong. It makes it feel like there's not much else worth trying to force, since it gets so much damage, and especially if you can combine it with Overwhammer, you basically just get a free win. Banshees here represents the OTK combo, which it's going to win you the game, and it's going to do it very easily once you combine it with Buckler. except you just need to be a bit careful about assembling it before the phase 2 boss, and assembling it can be a bit tough. Usually you have to do a bit scrappier, unless you can hit Ouroboros and then remove the Ouroboros, or just keep scrapping the Ouroboros. I'm going to put an 8 here, just because it is very hard to assemble, but it is an instant game win, basically. Safety Net is basically just any kind of damage comp, which, I mean, it's really strong. Safety Net can just carry comps very easily. Having extra 5 peg hits every round, adding that in with like any damage multiplier, any high damage, you're just going to get a pretty easy win. This is a stone comp, stuff the sling. It's pretty obvious. It's really not that amazing. It's very fun and it's pretty easy to force, but you're generally not going to get many wins out of it when you try and force it. It's a bit too counterintuitive what you're trying to do. You want to stack up the stones, which aren't particularly amazing unless you can hit Overwhammer. If you hit Overwhammer, then you're actually pretty fine, you're rolling. But, you know, it's a bit rough. Like, you generally want Boulder for your AoE before you get to level 2, because some fights can be a bit tough. Although the 200-600 fight was just made easier, and Boulder was just unnerfed, which is good because it probably needed it. But I don't think I can put it any higher. It's like A minus B plus. Cookie represents refresh comps, which Cookie can just carry refresh comps just on its own of being able to outheal enemies. Generally, you do want Refresher Course or Refiller Buster or Memorb, Majorska, that kind of thing, as your win condition. But it's honestly like, it's very solid. Whether or not, it's very solid. I wouldn't recommend trying to force it too often, but once you can find the pieces early on, you're going to have a pretty fun run. Recombobulator. I'm separating the bomb comp into 2 different passives, Sapper Sack and Recombobulator, just because it's generally a pretty bad idea to take them both, with with Sapper Sack being buffed down to 3 self damage per bomb. If you can combine that with Intentional Oboe, I think you can probably take both of them. It's just you're still taking very heavy damage, and it's very scary. Recombobulator though, it's really strong. I've had runs where I deal like 10% damage to the final moving bosses, and then I deal 25% of their health to them through bombs, and then I deal like something like 120%. Like, it scales super duper fast. It's very easy to scam wins out of Recombobulator. It does require a bit of setup, which is why it's probably not going higher. But yeah, it's really strong. Sapper Sack, I think with the buff, I do just have to put it in S tier. It is definitely one of the strongest boss passives in the game. And with the new buff, it's just absolutely amazing. It carries you through round 2 very easily. And you definitely notice the impact it makes on round 3. And if you can get any healing in your deck, which should look a bit easier now with the added healing orb, I think it's really solid, especially since the new healing orb buffs to max HP. But I think it's honestly amazing. Potentially, yeah, I'd say better than Safety Net even. Ring of Indignation represents self-damage. Now, self-damage, if this was 2 patches ago, when self-damage, all the self-damage, like oblation stuff, hadn't been introduced, I'd definitely put it maybe B tier, high B tier. Now that we've got all this self-damage stuff in the game, I think it's honestly really solid. Really, really very solid. It's definitely SA. The problem is it's very easy to kill yourself, but now with the Sapper Sack change, I think it can also just be put in S. It works in tandem with the Sapper Sack, but the Sapper Sack's meant to represent more bombs-focused passives. Generally, you have something like Bombaton or Bombulate as well. Ambidextrony just represents a discard comp, and using bonuses to cycle through your deck, you generally gain something off of Bad Cheese, Balance, or Refresh Shield. It is very solid, and it doesn't have the same downside as the Stone comp, where you have to have a bunch of stuff in your deck. You got to have a very small amount of stuff in your deck, and you're basically shooting the orbs that you want every single turn. It's very similar to an Ouroboros style deck, but yeah, it's very good. I'm probably just going to have to put this in C tier. Dumbo quite literally represents the Dumbo deck, which is you want to stack my circle as much as possible, and you generally do that in tandem with ambidextrony and making sure that you get your +2 must circle per reload, because +2 must circle is a lot, and it's enough to force a must circle comp. It's just it's very rough. Then we have the blind comp, and the blind comp, it is. I haven't been able to pull off a successful blind comp at all, but once you combine all the blind passives as well as it's actually pretty good with Ring of Persist being able to get 15 blind or 19 if you have this, which I think this should be unnerfed by the way. 19 blind, then 19 blind, 38 blinded on a boss is generally enough to make them stop attacking you. But it's really not very solid. I'd much rather run stone comp over a blind comp. I think I'll have to put it in B minus C. Then we have Matryoshka, which is basically you use either Matryoshka or Matryoshka Shell to try and duplicate your hits as much as possible. Usually either through this high damage orbs, which is basically just a damage deck, but it also has excellent synergy with stuff like Swalt Orb and Splat Orb. Those kind of orbs. It's just really good. Or Bob Orb, for example. Like, it's very strong, and it's definitely one of the strongest passives. I think I have to put it in high A tier. It's definitely... It really could deserve the S tier, but there are just a few too many orbs, which make it a bit rough to try and force a Matryoshka Shell comp a lot of times. And then the final orb comp that we have here is the Ouroboros comp, which I'm just going to put as Monster Training for now. Ouroboros comp is honestly, it really is just amazing, especially with, I'm not sure what the buff is, but especially with the latest buff, it is so strong. Being able to remove your entire deck and then have it replaced with a really strong orb, which you can then get the triple combo of AoE massive damage with the Ouroboros and the heal orb, or you can combine the two for with the Nosferatu. Then it's actually it's really strong, and I've used it to carry a lot of runs. It's a great way to carry through Crucible, and it's honestly just an amazing event. It allows you to turn on a lot of combos like discard comps or OTK comps. It's just really good in general.